Hey everyone. So a few months ago I made a cover of a K-pop Demon Hunters song called Your Idol. It goes something like this. And in this video we're going to go over how I made that cover. So let's dive into Ableton. Disclaimer, I am nowhere near professional level when it comes to producing, mixing, mastering, singing, playing instruments, living, but I do what I can. And hopefully you guys can learn something from this. And if you have any comments about something I should be doing differently, I would be delighted to look at them and take them into consideration when producing my next cover or song that is coming out soon. So we have our project loaded up here. Wow, it's been a while since I opened this. Let's go through each track one by one. Let's look at the trap drums. My bad. So we just got a basic loop here, I think. Let's open one of these loops up. I layered two different kicks. I think I wanted one where I can hear more of the click from like a traditional kick drum, like the batter head being hit by the actual kick. So I think that one, yeah, this one. That would be essentially the high end of our kick, and we have a sub kick to drive underneath. So that would be our analog kick right here. It gives us more of the sub frequency we hear inside of the song from the original song. With that, it should sound like this when it's mixed together. I get the low end from the sub, and I get the high end from that realistic kick drum. And it gives a good thump and it drives the song. On top of that, I did also layer some real drums that I played, but we'll get to those tracks in a second. In terms of the snare, I did layer, I think, 4 different snares. Okay, so these 4 snares right down here. So all of these kind of had the same concept as the kick. I definitely wanted to have some kind of like realistic sounding drum on top of everything with the high frequencies. I'm pretty sure that was, yeah, these 2 right here. When played together, I'm pretty sure they gave a pretty holistic sound. I don't know if I'm describing it correctly. So if I play it together. So that made up the high end of the snare. For the low end of the snare, I definitely wanted something similar to, for the bass drum. It gives it more fullness. That way it doesn't sound kind of like too clicky. And on top of that, the actual song, it had a lot of like reverbiness to it, but there was something about it that wasn't just like a layered on reverb. So I just added a last snare specifically for like the tail end of the snare. So when it's all put together, it sounds like this. You get the fullness from the first 3 snares, and then the tail end where the reverb is the 4th snare that I put in. So all together with the kicks, should sound like this. Other than that, it's a pretty basic trap drum beat. I think the 808s are just, yeah, just typical 808s. Really choppy. You got that kind of like rolling sound where you do like a almost like a triplet feel. Don't quote me on that. So there was another snare there actually. This. Okay, so the snare is more traditionally like a trap snare that's used for like the offbeat accent hits. Da-da, da-da, da. Yeah. So all together. Yeah, so that's the E drum portion of the song. I did pair that with real drums that I recorded and tracked into the song. Let's talk about that now. So on that same section, it sounds like this. I essentially started off with the E drums first. That way I can just kind of help elevate the already existing drums with the real drum sound. So for the kick, we have basic effects in here, gate so that we can block out all the rest of the noise. If I don't have that, you're gonna hear everything with it. It emphasizes just when the kick is hit. Just make sure your threshold is the right spot. For the EQ, don't judge my EQ. Someone teach me how to properly EQ. But as for how I did it, I wanted to cut out a lot of the mids. I know that for sure. Get the top end in there so that I can hear kind of like same concept with the other E drums. I can hear like that batter head hit with the kick, and then keep that low end frequency down here by the 100 hertz range to keep that kind of sub frequencies. So without it, it's pretty flat. Now I'm able to hear a lot more of the high end. What was this doing? Getting rid of that snare sound. And then I do always tend to try and boost them up with a utility close to 0 decibels with the limiter, just keeping everything in check. That way I have enough room. I can always drop down the decibels of each track to compensate for the volume. I do not go by, if you're not redlining, you're not headlining. Only sometimes. But in this case, no, we're not crunching that kind of kick. We're doing some pretty basic effects on these real drum tracks. Now, moving on to the snare. Same concept, gate, EQ, keep the subs, cut the mids, boost the highs for that kind of like snappiness to it. And then I think also this is a cutting frequency because I think there was cutting it. Let's see what it sounds like without that. Ugh, nasty. Boost the highs. I think I'm pretty sure I did this to diminish the hi-hat sound. Yeah, it was just cutting through there. I think this just gave it more air. Saturator to make it more full. Reverb just a tiny bit. As for toms, I kind of didn't put too much thought into them. I did make this pretty fast. If it was 80 to 90% of the way there, I get lazy, okay? It was a long night when I made this, I'm pretty sure. So, as you see, a lot of the shells, if not all the shells, I'm pretty sure had the same philosophy. Cut the mids, boost the highs, keep the sub. You see in majority of the tracks, especially with the ones with a lot more sub frequencies, I tend to do a hard cut around the 20 hertz mark, just to, if I ever possibly somehow want to perform this live, I don't make the subwoofers tweak the fuck out. Same thing with the higher frequencies too. I tend to do a hard cut at the highs at the top of almost all the tracks and on the master track. For my setup on my drums, I have overhead left, overhead right, and also SM7B for the hi-hat. I learned that trick, I forgot what video I watched, but someone said it makes you just need a little bit of it just to make everything sound a lot better, especially if you're utilizing a lot of the hi-hat in your songs. I did not want to make the mistake of quantizing all of them separately and have it all out of sync with each other, because sometimes quantizing each track when you're playing real drums tends to, sometimes if you don't play it like absolutely perfect, it makes it sound a little wonky sometimes. But in this case, it works out because it was kind of masked by that trap drum we have on top of it. But for the overheads, I exported them together so that I can have one track that I quantized that I know is in time because it wasn't quantized yet. As for what I did to that track, you can see that I boosted some of those levels on some parts, I think for some of the accents. Yeah, just like little fills here and there. Just to EQ, cut the lows out, boost the highs just a little bit. This is a free plugin just to like tame some of the harshness that can come from those overhead mics, especially with the cymbals. I do rock some Zildjian A series cymbals, which tend to be a little harsher than the darker cymbals like the K series ones that I know. With that in mind, I needed to tame that kind of harshness from these cymbals. So I use Vastas for that. And all together with the trap drums, it sounds like this. This little effects, I'm pretty sure I just copied straight off the track. I just found something that sounded relatively similar. What I did, because there was not two different separate samples, I just copied them and I pitch shifted them to get the sound that I want. See, you can see here I transposed this 4 and I transposed this 1 to get that kind of like high and low tom effect. Oh, yeah. Now the last piece of the drum is in the pre-chorus, where there's kind of like these, I already knew it was some kind of like taiko drum. It's not a traditional tom. For those, I wanted to make it sound more full. So I made one track, I doubled it, and I panned it right and left. If I was smart, I would have hit a delay somewhere, but I don't think it got any fuller. It just got louder because I did not delay them to be slightly out of sync. Note to self, do that if you want to do a pan right and pan left in the same track. For taikos, yeah, these are some meaty sounding taikos. I think out of all the percussion, this one is probably my favorite. So kind of a similar concept with the actual trap drums. I had 2 separate sets of toms for the accent offbeats. So I think I had one that was higher pitched for that like accent. I think it hit hard break. Yeah, this one right here. And then given reverb to make it sound a lot more echoey. And on top of that, duplicated track, saturated to give it more fullness. But take this off, it's slightly more tame. If I put it on, it gives it a little more pop. Side chaining so that I can make sure that this cuts through some of that other tracks. I do that with all the drums, especially for the shells, so that they can really emphasize on like kick, snare, and some of the tom fills. The delay, I'm pretty sure, is to give it more of the echo and reverb. I did layer that with these toms I talked about already. So altogether, with the taikos, it sounds like this. Goes back to that trap drum beat with the acoustic drums. The drums out of the way, let's talk about bass. Now, there's a few different sets of basses that I use in this song because there's different ones in the beginning, and then throughout the rest of the song is essentially the same. I picked like the first saw synth bass that I thought sounded similar enough. Did I alter some of those parameters here? Man, I don't know. But I did want that kind of like 808 kind of like with the kick drum. It's just like that through the whole song. A lot of these instruments I'm using or these effects I'm using are free or they're stock plugins for Ableton. Because I'm a broke boy. Let's talk about the top end stuff. There was a lot of organic sounding synth / strings. So I tended to use a lot of that, especially in the pre-chorus and the chorus. Yes. In the pre-chorus, there's a bunch of this sign player plugin, and I literally just copied and pasted that and tried to build my own string section from there. I also added in with the same plugin brass section. I think it was this one. There we go. For the chorus. Now, if there's one thing I did differently, there's a slide here. Dun, 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 instead of it being cut in the actual song, it's dun, 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 dun. It's like that. I got lazy and I ended up not doing that. Now, in terms of the synths I used, there's some like organ sounding synths that were in the beginning or in the middle of the song. Yeah, there's that. Not much to it. This is more like, kind of like a synthetic choir. Oh, there's these two ones for the ending. But yeah, I think there was like a kind of sound effect-y thingy I remember from the song, so I put that in for that. Going on to the guitars. The guitars are also one of my favorite parts of the song because I based it off of this other YouTuber named Simon who made a cover of this, and I decided to learn that and chuck it into this song too. And it goes something like this. For all of these guitars, I did use a Neural DSP plugin. That one is a paid plugin. For all of these guitars, I did use the Tim Henson archetype. Yes, I do like Polyphia. They all have these settings here. Do I remember what they do exactly? No. I do believe I switched it up between these three kind of template defaults, and then I changed them a little bit depending on whether it was a lead guitar, like these two are like rhythm kind of sections, and then it passes to a lead section down here, and that changes, I'm pretty sure. The part that was really hard, the vocals, the beginning choruses and the last chorus, I just racking up the takes I could get. Some of these I will have used the technique of just doing many takes and layering them on top of each other. And some of them I did use Onterra's harmony engine to simulate it, or I did use some kind of like chorus kind of effect to achieve like 80% of the way there. For the beginning, I did initially start by doing this. There were some takes that I remember they just weren't blending together correctly, so I think I cut it down to a few, and I just used Avox Duo to compensate for the lack of voices. And then on top of that, some kind of choir engine from Onterra's. All of these are running through Autotune first to get them pitch corrected. Two different sets, one of the chanting one like that, and one that's like kind of singing this hymn. The choir sound effects that came from these takes, I initially tried to use the Avox choir plugin to simulate a bigger choir size, but because I have so many vocal takes stacked on top of each other, it was just clipping and it was not meshing together. So I ended up just sticking to Avox Duo because it still gave me a little more voices inside of my mix, but it didn't break it. In the beginning, all together. I do eventually want to get Fab Filter for that dynamic EQ, dynamic side chaining. Ooh. So that's for the chorus. It doesn't have to be fully perfect because choruses always have like a variation in voice and pitch and timing. There's a lot of variables that make a choir sound like a choir. Ignore these names. I was tired. For my core stuff, if it's repeatable, I'm gonna just resample it and then copy it. And it makes it cleaner to do like effects on a sample track rather than effects on a group sometimes. Now, let's see the main vocal line, the one that broke my voice, honestly.
Keeping you in check, keeping you obsessed. Play me a repeat, get the she in your head. Anytime it hurts.
For the main vocal line, I do kind of the basics: EQ, compression, pitch correct, everything. Especially for the vocal line, this song does have a pretty fast pitch correction, delay and reverb to kind of stack that kind of like tail end of each word, and a utility to boost it up towards that kind of like 0 decibel mark. So there's that. You could hear the kind of ad-libs are also part of this main line because I did want it to cut through kind of some of the other tracks.
Check, keeping you obsessed. Play me a repeat, get the she in your
Track
head.
left and right.
Anytime it hurts, play another verse. I could be your sanctuary. No, I'm the only one but now.
It was really interesting in the pre-chorus. Some of the notes, I'm pretty sure he used some kind of vocoder. I kind of did it by just doing a couple harmonies. Here's how it sounds like.
Your soul. I'm the only one who love your sins. Feel the way my voice gets underneath your skin. Listen, cause I'm
One of the fun parts of the song was the rapping in Korean. I am not Korean, so that I hope I didn't butcher any words. But yeah.
reaching on your fingers to get you, I'm your idol. Thank you for the pain, cause it got me going viral. Yeah, knocking on your fever.
So I did one normal with like just singing freely, and I did one with like kind of like using my low register voice so I can stack it on top of each other, make it sound more full.
Don't let it show, keep it all inside.
More
The
harmonies.
pain and the shake, keep it out of sight. Your obsession, feels a connection. Isn't gonna give me all of your attention. You know I'm the only.
On some of these harmonies, there's some latency when recording, so I just went into Autotune and I manually time shifted some of them.
Isn't gonna give me all of your attention. You know I'm the only one who loves
Same kind of vocoder effect here.
sins. Feel the way my voice gets underneath your skin. Listen, cause I'm preaching to the choir.
This ending literally broke my voice. I genuinely could not sing for months after recording this song, which is why I stopped posting for a while, because I literally couldn't make anything.
Now I
Here it
will
comes.
make you pray when you're all a part of me. Preaching to the choir. Can I get the mic a little higher? Give me your desire.
That part absolutely ruined my voice because that is so far out of my range. And I do not have good technique, as you can tell. You hear that distortion, you hear it was not natural, but mixed with the choir, it sounds a lot better. So for the master, basic EQ settings, make sure I cut all the super low frequencies, super high frequencies, so that no tweeters or no subwoofers will tweak out if I have something pinging off there. I did want to boost some of the highs to give it more that kind of shine with like the synths and like the vocals. Compressor to just even things out. Utility so that I can crank it back up towards the limiter so I can get that kind of loudness. Reverb just to get that kind of more full sound, and blast outs to kind of tame those high end bits like the cymbals. Sometimes the guitar has a little more bite to it than what I would want, so this is kind of just like a global high frequency tamer. Yeah, there's synths, but there's a lot of riser kind of sound effects. Those are like exactly like that. Some of the sound effects I couldn't get like correctly, but I just used what I had and just made it sound as good as I could possibly get it. These are all stock sounds from Ableton that I just like jumbled together. And yeah, that's about it. Now, all together, it does sound like...
Living in your mind now. Too late, cause you're mine now. I will make you pray when you're all a part of me. Preaching to the choir. Can I get the mic a little higher? Give me your desire. Watch me set your world on fire. I want to see where you can't look away. Don't you want me to see you? Now we're running wild. I'ma be your idol.
And that is everything I did to recreate K-pop Demon Hunter's Your Idol. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace! That was a really bad ending. Bye.